So over the last 4 years, I've worked with many smart contract hack war rooms with many protocols, some that started after all the money was gone, and some where we were racing an attack that was just about to land and we saved the money. My name is Daniel von Fange. I'm a security-focused smart contract engineer at Ordered and Protocol. I'm also a member of the Security Alliance SEAL 911 team. Today, I'm not going to talk about a comprehensive framework for incident response or give specific details on what you should do in one. Instead, I'm going to tell 3 good stories, and we'll learn some lessons from each one of them. So this is incident response lessons from human spaceflight. So Charlie Bolden eventually became the head of NASA. He was the previous head of NASA. There's a story he liked to tell from his early days as an astronaut. He was in the space shuttle simulator piloting the shuttle. His commander was Hoot Gibson, a fighter pilot's fighter pilot, an F-14 Tomcat test pilot, and then one of the first men to fly an F-14 into combat. In the simulation, the space shuttle had just jettisoned its booster rockets and was now using only its built-in engines to get the rest of the way to space. As usual in the simulator, something went wrong. One of the engines failed. There was a procedure for this. Shut off the failed engine and use the other 2 engines to make it over the Atlantic Ocean to land in Ireland. Not going to space anymore, but no one dies. Moments later, there was also a minor electrical problem. Charlie Bolden shut off the electrical bus with the minor problem, but it turned out it was the one currently controlling one of the 2 remaining working engines. The engine shut off as a result. There was no way to restart, and the one remaining shuttle engine couldn't get them across the Atlantic Ocean. The sim ended, everybody died. Bolden's shuttle commander, Hoot Gibson, turned to him from the other seat and said, "Today, you just learned about Hoot's Law. In an emergency, you can always make the situation worse." It's very easy to glorify and dramatize the heroics that happen during incidents, but lurking behind all of them is the pure fact that you can always make things worse. In fact, given the big levers you're willing to pull, and the time crunches and the possible bad information and misunderstandings, there's probably no time you are more likely to do something wrong. So how can you prevent this? Well, I can't give all the answers, but one simple thing is don't act too fast. A war room during an incident is a lot of time figuring out what's going on, and then a few actions. When it comes time to act, take a brief pause first and make sure that your action is correct. One technique for this comes from the U.S. Navy's nuclear reactor operations. It's point, say, do. Before a nuclear sailor opens the valves or flips a switch, they point at it, say what they're doing, and only then do it. This gives everyone around a chance to catch a mistake that they're making. In fact, in shuttle training operations, Hoot Gibson would often put his fingers on the wrong switches and make sure that other people in the flight crew caught it and called him out on what he did. In a war room where you're going to take an action, make sure to say it before taking it. Now, multisigs that a lot of people use in crypto are great for this because you define exactly what's going to happen and everyone can see what it is. But don't sign something until you've given just a little bit of thought about how this could go wrong. So there's a right speed to act in a crisis. Don't act too fast, and communicate what you're acting. All right, next story. An explosion ripped through Apollo 13 service module, destroying oxygen tanks, electrical power, and life support for the 3 astronauts on the way to the moon. Houston, we have a problem. Now, these are a famous set of words, but I think these words are much more important than we usually give them credit for. It's a very clear statement that we have moved out of normal, and we've moved into a time when everyone needs to be reacting to serious problems. These words did not create the incident. The clock of doom was ticking on the astronauts, regardless of their acknowledgement of it or not. But by saying them, everyone was now acting on the problem. Disasters are my personal hobby. And it's impressive and a little frightening how many disasters happen slowly, in plain sight, with no one willing to say out loud that there's a problem. How do you drive an oil tanker into a lighthouse in New York City Harbor on a clear night with lookouts and radar and everyone talking about the lighthouse? This happened in 2007. The oil tanker MV Axel Spirit did that. The second officer was watching the radar and for 20 minutes knew that they were heading for the lighthouse. At the same time, the captain was watching the lighthouse with his eyes and confident that they were sailing around it. The second officer, instead of saying, "Captain, we have a problem," he just repeatedly told the captain that the bearing to the lighthouse is still 235 degrees. Now, the reason why that's bad, if that continues over 15 minutes, is if your direction to something stays the same, that means you're either moving straight towards it or straight away from it. If you're going beside something, it's going to be changing. But he just kept on telling the captain the same bearing. 2 minutes before the collision, the second officer and the lookout both told the captain 4 times in 30 seconds, "We are very close to the lighthouse." Now, the captain had planned on sailing close to the lighthouse, so this didn't alarm him. But after hearing that 4 times in 30 seconds, he said, "Do you mean we are too close to the lighthouse?" And the second officer said yes. The captain ordered a turn, but it was too late. Scratch one tiny lighthouse, end one captain's career. So how could this have been done better? Imagine if the second officer had said instead, "Captain, we have a problem. Radar has shown for the last 10 minutes that we are headed directly for the lighthouse. We will hit it in 5 minutes. We should turn to port now." If the second officer had said that, we wouldn't be talking about this story. Nothing would have happened. Now, most people are naturally inclined to avoid kicking off an incident procedure and inconveniencing everyone, waking people up in the middle of the night. Maybe the problem will get better on its own. Maybe I'm mistaking about what I'm seeing. Someone more senior is around. Surely they're seeing the same thing I'm seeing, and they don't think it's a problem. So I've been guilty of this myself more than once, and it's an easy trap. So to get incidents called, you need to make sure your team is comfortable calling them, knows who to call, when to call, what to say, how to do it. But like everything else, this has to be communicated to people before the incident, preferably several times over and over. How do you kick it off? Call this person, these people, and have the team have those phone numbers. All right, next story. Apollo 11 went to the moon. Complete success. 4 months later, the next mission was on its way. With the president watching and 7.5 million pounds of thrust pushing it, the Saturn V rocket launched into the clouds and was out of sight. 36 seconds after liftoff, a massive bolt of lightning struck the rocket. Alarms went off, warning lights lit up all over. All 3 electrical generation systems had a problem. Primary and backup AC and DC power distribution had issues, and not enough electricity was reaching the control panels inside the spacecraft. The astronauts and those on the ground started debugging the problem. 20 seconds after that, a second bolt of lightning hit the spacecraft. This took out the guidance systems and the telemetry to the ground. The round ball display in the cockpit that shows which way the spacecraft was pointing just started to aimlessly spin. And because of the telemetry problems, some of the data to mission control was now scrambled nonsense, including vital data about the electrical systems. It was not good. The astronauts continued through calling out the errors they were seeing over the radio and attempting to get back electrical power. At this time, the rocket was passing through max Q, the point where there's the most pressure on the rocket. And they were experiencing 4 Gs of weight. So imagine debugging in an environment where you've got the world's most powerful rocket thundering behind you. There's electrical problems. There's multiple people communicating. And you're under 4 Gs of pressure reaching up above you to work on control panels. And it's like picking up a 5 kilogram weight on each hand just to reach up and touch a switch or change something. Now, on the ground, electrical engineer John Aaron looked at the screen full of random garbage. And he told the flight controllers to tell the astronauts, "Set SCE to aux." It took a few tries to correctly relate this to the capsule, but once they did, an astronaut flipped the SCE switch to auxiliary, and instantly the telemetry started working again, electrical power began rising, and all this drama was inside the space of 60 seconds. Now, the astronauts actually decided against further messing with the fuel cells since they were seconds away from a critical part of the flight. Stage separation was about to happen. Then once the craft got into orbit, the crew and mission control worked through the rest of the getting the capsule's guidance systems going, getting the fuel cells back, and then completed their mission to the moon successfully. So I actually have 3 lessons from Apollo 12. First of all, incident response is really, in my opinion, about getting to safety. You want to stop the bleeding. You want a reported critical issue to not harm users. You want funds to be saved. You want further attacks blocked. You're not there to solve all the problems in the world. Get the funds to safety, don't fix smart contract bugs. I've seen a project rush to fix a bug in a half an hour, only to add another critical bug to their smart contracts. And then they posted it to their blog with the bug right in the code. One big way to help getting to safety is to have planned procedures for getting to safety. Do this set of things to pull funds from a strategy that's backed by something that's now going to have a problem. Do this to pause the protocol. The second lesson from this, the first step of response after calling an incident is to alert the right people to the incident. The Apollo 12 fix happened because the right person was in the room. John Aaron had worked for 2 years on the electrical systems of the spacecraft, which is about how old it was, and knew it inside and out. And so when something goes bad, you need to get the right people in and communicating with each other. Just as a fun fact, when Apollo 13 explosion happened, John Aaron was off duty and not in mission control. He was at home shaving. Mission control called him, and he debugged the situation over the phone from his house and figured out that it was not any kind of sensor issue, that actually the spaceship really did have all those problems, and then drove over and was a major driver in getting Apollo 13 back home safely. But so when there's an incident, declare it, get the people in the room. All right, third one, simulations. John Aaron knew how to fix the telemetry error because he had seen this problem once a year before in a launch simulation with real hardware. And rather than just treating the garbled data that showed up as a one-time problem, he tracked down on his own both what had happened and how to fix it. So when this same error showed up a year later, he recognized the pattern of data on his screen and knew what to do. So contact with reality, even in simulations, lets you learn. And if we think back to the first story about Hoots Law, those astronauts got to make their mistakes in a simulation, not in real life, and so nobody died. So I'm going to go dive into this one just a little bit deeper and make it my main thing about this talk is if you've never practiced incident response before, you as a team are going to be bad at it. That's just how it is. So a little secret about life. When you are completely inexperienced at something, it's the least effort it will ever be to improve at it. So skill gains follow a curve. You get big gains at first and then smaller and smaller gains as you continue to work at it. Being elite at something takes a tremendous amount of work and time and discipline. Moving up from never having done something before is actually really easy. If you're a protocoler in the crypto business, host even one incident response simulation. You don't even have to have any surprises in it, even tell people what to do ahead of time. Just going through the motions together will show you rough spots and give you a better shared understanding of what needs to happen. So to recap today, you can always make things worse, actually declare the incident, stop the bleeding, get the right people in the room, do a simulated incident. None of those are in order, but all those are important. That's it. Thank you.